Hey, I'm John from Jumpers Junction. I'm an athlete and coach in track and field, and this is the very first video in a series about the fundamentals of long jump. This is teaching long jump from the beginning to the intermediate and advanced. So there'll be different series. So what I'm doing is I'm going to break down long jump into its 4 individual phases: the approach phase, or the run-up, the takeoff phase, the flight phase, and the landing phase. I'm going to go in each one of those in a little bit more detail. So with that, let's get started. We start with the approach phase. This is your run-up. This is the most crucial part of long jump. To me, it's impossible to produce a good performance or a good distance without a fast and accurate run-up. And I say fast and accurate, and we'll talk more detail about that. But the key is you're accelerating to a maximum controlled speed by the time you reach the takeoff board. There's 3 main tasks the athlete is trying to achieve during the run-up. Speed. You're trying to generate a max velocity at the takeoff board. Remember, it's a build-up. You don't want to accelerate too early and then start slowing down when you reach it. You want to be accelerating gradually to get a max speed, but also a max control, because if you're out of control and you're running too fast and your stride's off, then it's not going to work. The second task that you're trying to achieve with the run-up is you're trying to place your takeoff foot accurately at the takeoff board. This is consistently. You want to take off from the same spot every time. You need to know where your mark is, where your starting point is, and you need to be able to, every time you run, be able to place your foot at the takeoff point at the right spot. The third task that you're trying to achieve from the approach is you're trying to convert your power from your run into your jump. Now, it's pretty simple. Run as fast as you can and jump. But the first phase is the run-up. So you might be asking, well, how far should I be running during my approach? And the answer is, well, the distance depends. And I know people say that it depends, but it depends on the level of the athlete, and it comes down to stride length, how quickly they can reach max speed, and also their endurance. For me, the number of strides should be somewhere between 10 strides in beginners to well over 20 for more advanced or elite athletes, and that length could be somewhere between 35 to 55 meters or somewhere between 115 to 180 feet. So it should kind of vary depending on athlete to athlete. But the key here is the athlete should have a consistent start at their approach, right? So how you start running into it from the very beginning should be consistent. So whether that's you rock a little bit back before you start, whether you skip and then start running, or you start walking before you start running, there's pros and cons to all the different styles, and I'll cover that in another video. But the key is being consistent, because you want to be able to hit the takeoff board at the same spot at your max velocity. Now, with the approach, there's actually different stages of the approach that you can break down into even more detail, and I'll cover that in another video. So again, the card right here, you'll want to click it when it's available. But to give background on it, there's really 3 stages of the approach, and that is your start, which is the acceleration stage, which is somewhere between 8 strides. You're driving, you're trying to build up your acceleration. Then you get into that middle element, which typically I like to call the alignment phase. And this is where you're trying to get a more erect posture, and you're trying to make sure that you have active, quick steps, but also you're trying to align yourself subconsciously to make sure you're going to get an accurate takeoff. And then that last stage is your takeoff prep. This is the penultimate. It's the last 4 to 6 strides. You're trying to make sure that you're positioning yourself for your appropriate takeoff. Which leads me into the second phase of long jump, which is your takeoff phase. So if we go back to the analogy of you're running as fast as you can and then you're jumping, well, the takeoff phase is the glue that holds it together. It's the jump. So in the takeoff phase, the jumper is generating a vertical velocity and trying to minimize the loss of a horizontal velocity. And the ultimate goal is, when you're running, you're building up your horizontal momentum, right? You're running down the runway. The takeoff is trying to convert that horizontal velocity into a vertical velocity, because you have to jump. It's an arch, right? You think about a javelin or a football. If you throw a football or throw a javelin straight, it's going to go far, but then it's going to drop real quickly. Versus if you throw it straight up, it's pretty much going to come straight down. You need the right arc, the right path for that javelin or that football to go in order to reach its ultimate max distance. It's a physics equation. And so now it's trying to understand, how do you take off in a way that's going to best position yourself for the maximum distance? And you might ask the question, well, how do I convert my speed from my approach into my jump? And for starters, you got to have a consistent run up. That's the key. You can't be stutter stepping. You can't be overstepping, trying to overextend to adjust the board. Your approach plays a major key into this. You got to have a consistent run up. And then also, the last phases of your approach is your penultimate phase. And I use that lightly because it gets overused, because people think that it's really just the last two steps when it's not. It's actually the preparation for your takeoff. This is just getting your body into the best possible position for takeoff. This means lowering your center of gravity slightly in a few strides just before takeoff in order to help get a takeoff angle somewhere between 15 to 25 degrees, because studies have shown that 15 to 25 degrees is the optimal arc in order to get that maximum distance. And I'll be sure to check out some more detailed videos, as I'll be reviewing some published studies which go into pretty detailed technical and statistical analysis on these long jump mechanics and fundamentals and techniques, all kinds of detailed information. So be sure to check that out when it's available. So back to our running and jumping analogy. Run, jump. From the moment you jump, once you're in the air, you get into the third phase of long jump, and that's called the flight phase. Now remember, you can't accelerate while in the air unless you can fly. So from the moment you take off, you will not jump any further, but you can do things in the air and you can do things at landing to help lose distance. So the ultimate goal of the flight phase is just to position your body into the best position for landing. Now this gets a lot of the attention, but it's actually one of the least important phases of long jump. But it looks cool. You see people doing the hitch kick and they seem to be running in the air, but it's really just the action of your arms, your legs, your hips, torso, head, all while in the air. You're trying to counter forward rotation and prepare yourself for the landing phase. When you think about long jump techniques, you probably are thinking about the different in-flight techniques. So let's talk about those. The common technique that's utilized by a lot of young athletes is the sail, glide, or the stride jump. Then you get a little bit more complicated from there. You get into the hang technique, the hitch kick, the double hitch kick, or the 2.5, and then a hybrid somewhere in between. But you need to remember that there is no best technique. All of them are best fit for individual athlete based on their own skill set. Whether that's you are more flexible, you might be better at the sail, or if you're a little more rigid, you don't have quite as much mobility, but you have a lot of strength and power, maybe the hitch kick is better, or the double hitch kick. It kind of varies by athlete. There's no best fit. But the key is try to figure out what best works for you, and if you don't like it, do something different. And I'll have more detailed video on each one of these techniques, so again, click up there or check out playlists on these. Alright, so once you do all the cool fancy techniques in the air, you have to land. You have to make contact with the sand. The ultimate goal of your landing phase, which is your force final phase, is to maximize the distance of your flight phase while minimizing the loss of distance at touchdown. So what I mean is, you do the hitch kick in the air, you cycle your legs, you cycle your arms, but ultimately you have to land. And if you put your feet down right away because you're trying to make sure you land on your feet, you're not going to get a lot of distance. You can lose distance even though you had a great jump. So the key is doing what's called the leg shoot. And it doesn't matter which technique. There's going to be a little bit of variations, but you do a leg shoot, which is you try to get your legs out as far in front of you as possible to control your center of mass. So this means sweeping your arms through as your legs extend up, keeping your heels as high as possible while folding from the hips, bringing your chest to your thighs, thighs to your chest, your head comes down and forward so that your knees will maximize up and you maximize the distance of your jump. Finally, once your heels contact the sand, you want what's called an active contact. You don't want to wait for the sand to contact you. You want to make contact because that means you're in control. You're pulling your body forward towards your heels. You're curling with your hamstrings to try to pull your body under so that when you hit the sand, your body contacts the sand in the same spot that your heels contacted. And that way you don't lose distance. The other thing it does is it helps decelerate you and it helps avoid injury. It's absolutely critical to get the maximum amount of distance while also making sure that we're doing this safely. And I have drills and I'll have more videos on these, so be sure to check out different playlists or little cards at the top. 2 lines. First line, coming in, popping up, working on the cycle. Second line, bungee cord. But the key here is long jump is pretty technical, even though it's just you're running and you're jumping. It holds still, but there's a lot more to it. You really got to think about this as a science. If you're serious about long jump, if you're serious about triple jump, if you're serious about any kind of field event, you need to know that you've got to utilize your strengths while also making sure that you stay technical. And it's okay to study. It's okay to really get into the details, because that's where you're going to improve. Anybody can be physical. Anybody can be strong. Anybody can be fast. But if you can technically advance yourself, that's where the key comes in, right? The old saying of hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. You can be as talented as possible, but if you really understand what you're doing, you're just doing it, you're going to have a threshold and you're never going to be able to push yourself past that boundary. Now, I'll have a lot more videos coming out. If you don't see them right now, that's because I'm building them or they're in the works. And hopefully you stay tuned for some awesome new videos coming out in the future. Thanks again.